Welcome to Systems of Existence, Eileen. I am head over heels excited that you're here, and it's kind of like I don't want to say a long journey because I started reaching out in August and wanted to have you on the podcast, and it was kind of synchronistic that it now aligns with Pluto moving into Aquarius, which is all about frequency, electricity, and you even have an electricity symbol in the background, of course, Miss Electricity. So yeah, before we dive into the nitty-gritty of everything, first of all, thank you for taking the time and shining a light today on your favorite system of existence, which is obviously the human biofield.
Yes, the human biofield, our electric bodies.
How and why has that been such an important thing for you in your life? Because I would say you are an early bird with all of that, right? The work at the biofield and using some instruments to tune it and telling everybody that they are just electricity. I mean, Walter Russell at some point said that to people, and even Tesla, but people didn't really get it, right? And then Eileen is coming around and saying like, hey, you can heal everything, like everything. And I mean, I have done many of your transmissions, and I love how you constantly say that, we can tune our body, not just with forks, but we can tune our body also with the way we speak to ourselves, right? And everything is all about intention and bringing us back into our coherent state and vibration. And so how did you come across the biofield and sensing? And I would actually love to know if you sense these distortions in the biofield.
Well, I started using tuning forks in 1996 in my massage therapy practice. And right off the bat, they confused me. They surprised me. They did not respond the way I thought that they might. Essentially, what I do is take a tone generator. A tuning fork is an acoustic tone generator, and activate it and hold it over the body and bounce the sound off the body and listen to the ping back. So it's sort of like sonar, or sometimes I feel like a bat or a dolphin, where I am sounding my environment in order to understand what's present. So it revealed many things, and I found that a number of things that were very odd. So one was that when I would hold the fork in different places over the body, it would sound differently. In some places, it would go very loud or sharp. In some places, it would go very quiet and almost like feel like it was being sucked in by the body. In some places, it would sound like it was full of static or noise. And when I first started telling this to people, outside the practice, what I was doing, they would say things like, oh, that's just room acoustics, or that's the Doppler effect. And I said, I understand both of those things, and there's something else going on here. And it took me a long time to come to understand that the body, because everything in the body is in motion, and everything in motion makes waves, and waves propagate. And we've all had the experience of getting a bad vibe off of someone. So we all know that waves propagate off the body and that we can sense them. But they're very high frequency, very low amplitude waves. But a tuning fork, an aluminum tuning fork, produces technically an infinite number of overtones and undertones. So it produces very high frequency, very low amplitude waves. And just like if you would drop two pebbles into the water, how those waves would intersect, you get this wave intersection between the tuning fork and the body. And even though it's in the range of that we can't hear, the nature of sound is that information precipitates down through the octaves into the hearing range. And so the tuning fork actually becomes an instrument that allows me to hear the waves coming off of the body. And so you can tell if a wave is coherent or incoherent. One of the very first experiences I had was with a client who came in with a sore shoulder. And I held the tuning fork over the good shoulder, and the tuning fork sounded coherent. It sounded like a C. But when I held it over the shoulder that was in pain, the tone went very sharp. And I was like, I'd go back. I'm like, that sounds normal. This sounds sharp. And so I just kept holding it in that area where the tone was sharp. And after just a little bit, it modulated, and then both shoulders sounded the same. And this fellow got off the table, and he rotated his shoulder, and he said, "Oh my God, Eileen, all the pain is gone." And I was like, wow, well, that's amazing. I didn't know what I was doing. Neither one of us had any expectation. We were just experimenting. So that was very intriguing to me, that I could find these places that were out of tune and just stay there and then watch the body actually tune itself to the tuning fork, right? So I was like, well, it appears that we are self-tuning instruments. How interesting. But one of the other strange things that I noticed was that I might be working on somebody in like the area of their hips, and I would find a loud spot over the outside of their right hip. And then I'd hold it over the middle where the chakra or nerve plexus was, and it would sound very quiet. And I remember thinking, well, if it's loud, that's energy, right? That's a sign that there's more energy. And it should be loud in the middle, in the energy center. And I discovered I could use the tuning fork like a magnet, that I could actually do what I call click, drag, and drop, and sort of click into where it was loud, and then drag it to the middle and then drop it there. And then it would be loud in the middle, and then it wouldn't be loud on the side anymore, right? So people get off the table and say, wow, I feel very centered. And so I developed this very simple process. Yeah, I developed this very simple process of finding loud spots and moving in the middle, and finding spots with static and staying there until they resolved. But it left me with a lot of questions. I was like, well, what is this stuff that I'm moving around? Like, what am I moving? And what law of physics is determining the fact that a vibrating tuning fork can move it, right? That's very, very perplexing to me. But then in 2009, I had sort of a pivotal moment of paradigm change, when my son, who just turned 12, and I'd given him some science books for his birthday, and he came to the dinner table and he said, did you know there's a fourth state of matter called plasma? And I was like, solid, liquid, gas. No, like somehow I missed an entire state of matter in my education. And then I went looking and discovered plasma. Well, what is plasma? It's the flow of electric charge, and it's absolutely ubiquitous in our environment. Our sun, the stars, lightning, even our atmosphere is a plasma. Like there's charge in our atmosphere. And it had been hidden. Like at that time, nobody had ever heard of plasma. Now in 2024, a lot more people have. But back then it was like discovering the light. And I came to realize that it was the body's electrical system that I was working with. I was working with the electric current flowing through the body and the magnetic field, or the bioplasma, that surrounded it, right? And we all learned in grade school that anything that has electric current running through it has a magnetic field around it. And the human body is absolutely no different. We all know that it's electricity that beats our hearts, that our brain waves are electric, right? Our nervous system, our blood carries a charge. So it's one of these places where we're missing the forest for the trees. Now, the electrical system has been described. Robert O. Becker wrote some books in the early 80s, The Body Electric and Cross Currents. And in both of those books, he talks about the body's electrical system. The problem is, and why I think this has been so hidden, is because the early researchers that were starting to grasp the electrical system also became acutely aware of how man-made electromagnetic frequencies informed it.
And
And
interfere.
yeah, absolutely interfere with it, right? And so the telecom big business, everybody doesn't want you to know that you have an electrical system, that you have an electrical signal, and that it's absolutely impacted by non-native EMFs, right? So I've been very careful to frame this understanding in, if you get your signal strong enough, if you get your signal clear enough, get your voltage high and your signal clear, you can navigate this EMF soup, right? Instead of like saying that that's bad or that, I'm like, we can overcome it. We can adapt and overcome. And so that has been, my approach to bringing this out to people so that you're not afraid of, wow, I'm electrical and this tower is really messing with me. When your voltage is low and your signal is fuzzy, yeah, you're going to be impacted. But there's ways around it by making the electrical system healthy. And so that's what my body of work does between biofield tuning, which helps to resolve the resistance and the noise in the current of electricity. And then the work that I do with Sing the Body Electric with vocal toning and sounding and singing. We get coherent sound from the outside and coherent sound from the inside. It's incredibly vitalizing and introduces coherence into the system, which is what the electrical system absolutely needs.
Yeah, it's actually, I think that combination is so powerful now that I also experiencing the body electric myself. And I've worked with your tuning forks for a while, specifically here at this baby, the sonic slider, which we will dive into in a second. But it's so fascinating to also be able to feel the vibration really in your body, where you can, I mean, I literally feel my cells are being recalibrated when I use my voice and when I hear and feel and sense the vibration of those tones, which a tuning fork alone does not do that for me. So it's, and specifically if I work with recordings only, which I definitely would love for you to shine a light why recordings are so powerful and why they work, like even distance tuning. But it's still different to when you really feel the vibration also on a physical level in the body, like inside.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I like to say is the most powerful thing in the universe is right under your nose, and it's your mouth.
And
And
it's free, it's free. It's
it's free.
the tool that you have, and we just don't know how to use the instrument.
Exactly. We don't know how to use the instrument. We don't understand our instrument. We don't know how to use our instrument. And as a consequence, we're all like Stradivariuses that have been terribly mishandled. And we have this innate perfection and beauty and harmony, but we've come into a world where we've been lied to about the nature of being human. We've been dumbed down. We've been poisoned. We've been, there's so many hurdles in the game of life to finding our inner light, finding our connection to God, remembering who we are, and then the vitality and the aliveness that comes from uncovering these things that are hidden. So I would say my journey has really been one of, as a truth seeker, being like, I made it through into adulthood with my bullshit meter staying intact. And, truth really has a ring to it. And so I've been sort of on a relentless dig into the true nature of myself, of what it means to be human, and what it means to be a healthy human, because I think we've so lost that information.
So how have you used tuning forks yourself for your health, your vitality? I know that the sonic slider has been an invention for you to kind of like I don't want to say get rid or like prevent wrinkles, right? First, initially, but it then evolved into something much, much bigger. And so maybe you want to also the tuning forks that you invented yourself, because we know tuning forks, obviously, like the different hertz scales, but you have created some specific ones, which the sonic slider is one of them. And I want to talk about the peacemakers, because I literally had a dream about them that will probably knock your socks off too. But first of all, tell us how you invent these different tuning forks, how you sense there's a need for something specific. Is this like, I would actually be curious, like, did you always have a musical ear or sense that you work with, hearing different pitches or sounds that are off, and then hearing there's a specific frequency that the field needs right now?
No, I was actually told that I was tone deaf by 5 different voice teachers in my 20s. So
Perfect.
I was not musical. I did not come from a musical family. I was a kid in music class who was singing off key, clapping off beat, and squeaking my clarinet. Like I was completely non-musical from a lack of exposure to it and also from trauma that really shut me down. So no, did not, none of it came naturally to me at all. It's definitely something I've had to work at. I have always been deeply observant. I take in and process information, I think a little faster than most people. And so I think that has informed what I do. But I initially created, well, the Sonic Slider came because when I was maybe 42, I'm 55 now, 56, I'm 50, I don't know what I am. Honestly. And I was born in 1968. So I was bringing my kids to school, and one of them said to me, and I think they're like maybe 9 and 12. And one of them said to me, "Mom, you're starting to look old." And the other one said, "Yeah, Mom, with all you do, you should have figured out how to not look old." And I was like, challenge accepted.
Well, you
So
figured it out now because definitely you don't look your age.
no, because of sound, truly sound, breath, all of that, right? And the sonic slider, I will say that it works. So initially, I created a system using the 128 hertz fork. Somebody had given me a 128 hertz weighted fork. It's a very standard weighted fork. And I discovered that if I used a crystal, like a quartz crystal point or an amethyst or a citrine, and I held it on my face and ran the sound in, it would kind of paralyze my muscles a little bit. And after doing this for like a week every day, I was hanging out with some friends and they're like, "Eileen, what did you do to your face?" Because I can get really squinty and frowny. I was like really can go kind of in the Clint Eastwood direction. And I said, "Sonic Botox." I invented it. But then, I just got really busy with writing a thesis and books and kids and travel and all that I kind of just stopped taking the time to do that. And then back in 2017, I was like, you know what? I want to revisit this tuning fork for rejuvenation idea. And so I had a number of different prototypes made based on the Schumann resonance, 7.83, because I already had the Schumann pair, 62.64 and 54.81, which are the Schumann resonance, 7.83 times 7 and times 8. So I got a few more of those harmonics of the Schumann resonance. I got a few forks based in sacred geometry numbers. And I knew the moment I activated what became the sonic slider, like the moment I activated it, put it on myself, I'm like, this is what I'm looking for, because it's this universally pleasing frequency. Like any of the other ones, like you put them on yourself for a while and then you're like, okay, I'm done with that. You just like, that was good. But the sonic slider, you can like rub on yourself, you can hold it on yourself, you can use it for so many things, and you just kind of never get tired of it, right? The body just kind of drinks it up. So I originally created it to use the long handle to like slide on the face and the neck and chin and all of that. But then I started using it on my body. And it sort of squeezed out water weight that I was carrying around that I didn't realize I was holding, because I had all these fascia knots from being in contraction so much as a kid that I had like knotted up all my fascia, and it wasn't allowing fluids to flow. So this process of using it with firm pressure made me come all out in bruises, which was kind of wild. And then I just started to water weight just started to come right off of me. So that was kind of amazing. But then in the years we've had it on the market, people have discovered that it helps with digestion, that it helps with pain, that it's a great first aid thing. Like you get a bug bite, you get a mosquito bite, you put it on it right away and the itch goes away, burns, bee stings. Like there's so many applications for this frequency, because it seems to me that it speeds up the body's natural healing process. It like gets underneath it and gives it a boost, and just helps your body to heal faster. It tones muscles, it firms skin, it does all these things. And then I created the different attachments for it. So you have a circuit boot, which is an amplifier, right? Which takes it to a whole new level. Because for years, people were asking me if they could do this work on themselves. They're like, "Can I tune myself? Can I use a tuning fork on myself?" And My trauma response was I'm got to take care of everybody else. I got to make sure everybody else is okay in order for me to be okay. Right. I went into the family emotional caretaker role when I was 10 years old and then kind of never came out of it. And so I was always other oriented. Right. It was like, so this whole idea of using tuning forks on yourself took me a long time to come around to. And so that was the sort of essence of it. It's like, this is a tuning fork for self-care, although certainly people use it in their practices on others.
For me, it's like the best way to describe the frequency, it's like a reset button. Like it's literally, to me, it's a reset button. It resets you wherever you need a reset, right? If your gut is out of whack and you have digestive issues, use it for that. I use it a lot when I was traveling too, to just like not be so jet lagged, and to just also obviously digestion with when we travel, but always every single day to again clear the field from these frequencies that are bombarding, right? It's just the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and
it
it's
was
really it's based in the Schumann resonance, right? Which is the Earth's background natural pulse. Like when we go to the beach or we go forest bathing, we're just really immersed in that frequency. And it is a frequency in our brainwave that really brings us into unity consciousness. So it connects us back into our environment, back into ourselves, back into right relationship with our environment, right? In this very gentle, like you said, reset kind of way.
so in that way, that would be the only fork that we need, even for healing like any sort of illness, in my understanding. Because if it would just reset every single cell, if it's like the cell that wants to age, or the cell that, could be, I don't know, like arthritis or whatever you have, you could just use sonic slider.
Yeah, I carry one in my purse, and I can do full sessions. I work in the field with it. I go to the body, work in the field. And, I meet anybody who's in pain anywhere. Like, let me fix you up. It is a very versatile, like if you're only going to get one fork, that might be the one to get. Yeah.
However, I want to say, because I had such a vivid dream about it, and I think even the number is pretty interesting. The 144.
Hmm.
For me, I mean, I don't have it yet, but I need to get my hands on it. For me, it just, I'm not sure if you said it or if it was in my dream, the truth detector,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. This fork was born. So 144 is part of the Fibonacci sequence. So I have a pair of forks based in the Fibonacci sequence that are 89 hertz and 144 hertz. They're weighted forks. And the 144 weighted, I call the Yang grandmother, because she comes in, and you know how the kind of grandmother comes in when the baby's born and she does all the dishes and does all the laundry and folds the fitted sheets just perfectly, and just does everything very efficiently, right? No fuss. That's the way the 144 weighted was. It would just come in and move stuff along. And so during COVID, there was so much fear in the collective that created this kind of stiffness in people's fields, that my 174 fork, which was my sort of primary field combing fork, was not getting through it in the way that I wanted to. And so I was like, well, the 144 weighted really gets through stuff. Let me see what a 144 unweighted is like. And
So
when
what
I,
between weighted and unweighted?
sure, I'll show you the 144
I
weighted.
know
So
how
this
it
is,
looks, but like
yeah,
energetically, how is it different? Because it's the same.
yeah, they're
But
completely different beasts, right? They're the same frequency, but they look so different. So 144 a weighted fork, you can't hear it, right? Like there's, if you hold it next
like
to your ear, you can, right? But
vibration, yeah.
what it's doing is it's sending the weight send the vibration down through the handle, and so you feel the vibration in your body. Whereas with an unweighted one, you hear it, but I don't feel it, right? Whenever I see people putting unweighted forks on the body, I'm like, waste of time. So
There's no vibration.
yeah, it's very, very faint. Um, so this one, like I remember when I got the first prototype and I was holding it over my son's knees, and he had been hit by a car a couple times on his bicycle, and his knees were they were out of alignment, both of them. And when I held this fork over his knees, it made such a distorted sound. He said, it sounds like an alien abduction is taking place because the overtones and undertones absolutely go into all kinds of contortions and distortions, and really show you very clearly, like, this is out of alignment, this is flat, this is that fear. It really shows fear. And that's why it was so helpful in COVID, is because it would get into the fear, it would really like amplify the fear, and then it would cause the fear to just resolve, right? So it's a very powerful fork, and it really like gets right into it. And this peacemakers thing that you were talking about before. So this is the 222, and this is one of my most recent forks. And this fork is a being fork. It is just a like, let's just be, right? I call this is the friend that comes over when you're all kinds of fussy and doesn't try to fix you, doesn't tell you anything's wrong, just really happy to just sit with you and love you just the way you are, right? So this one is like, these are all the things that are wrong with you, and this is how I'm going to fix it. And this one is like, I love you just the way you are. And when you activate them together, you get this really wild combination of I love you just the way you are, and I'm going to fix you. And it's
Gonna fix you too.
yeah, yeah, and I call them the peacemakers because it helps bring like a sense of resolution to things that feel unresolvable. And so there's just certainly with frequencies, you can go off the deep end. You could have hundreds of forks. You know what I mean? And I'm a minimalist, so I've tried to keep what I use to the bare minimum, right? I have 5 weighted forks and 5 unweighted forks, and that's all I use is 10 forks. And between the 10 of them, I can pretty much get things to shift out of stuckness, out of incoherence, and back into, to resolve back into flow and coherence. And it's just a wonderful, and then the voice, right? Then you throw the voice into the mix, and you've got all the ingredients from within and without to support you in staying in a regulated state.
I just thought, when I saw the Peacemaker set, first of all, I thought, you can't make this up. It's the 144, which is all about, the 144,000 people, and it's the truth, detector. And so it was kind of like, did she make that up, that number? And then the 222, the angel frequency, I was like, this is so wild. And I have to share, when you did an attunement in Sing the Body Electric with the Peacemaker set, so maybe that was the reason why. But during the night of the elections, I need to share that I had a dream about this set and you, but you were basically gifting me the 144 hertz fork in that dream, and I, for whatever reason, ended up meeting Donald Trump, and we were exchanging the frequency of the Peacemaker set, which
Oh my God.
I thought was so wild because, of the name of the Peacemaker and whatever. And he basically shared with me that he has been a user of the Sonic Slide, that, I was into biofield tuning and tuning forks. But then he was going on and on about the Peacemaker set and how he wants to have that now. And I mean,
You should send
I
him
saw
one.
it as a good omen for America, but it was just so interesting. And ever since, I'm like, I need to get this set, because you were basically showing me, like, pitching the 144 and basically telling us all how out of tune the whole country was and the whole field. And literally it broke in the dream, it broke the fork because it was so out of tune.
I have broken forks on out of tune people, believe it or not. I truly have. Forks just let go of their structural integrity if something is highly distorted and it's interacting with it. I haven't had it happen in a long time. In fact, I had to make my own alloy. I worked with my manufacturer for like 1.5 years, and he kept making me all these different alloy blends and different gauges of tuning forks because the standard ones that I had been using kept losing their structural integrity. And he said, well, these forks aren't designed to be used in the way you're using them. You're going into the field, you're finding traumatic memories. There's high levels of distortion taking place that's making the forks bend in ways that they aren't supposed to. And so we had to create a custom alloy that would hold up and stay in integrity, even going into heavy distortion. And so that's why my forks are expensive. My forks are twice as expensive as most forks, but they're super high quality, like tuning forks off Amazon. People are thinking, oh, I want to try some sound healing, and you go buy a cheap fork. That's not a sound healing tool. That's a cheap instrument that is not going to do you or the people you work with any justice. Like, these are specifically calibrated, chosen, orchestrated for maximum impact working with the biofield.
Yeah, I mean, and as far as I see it, it's like, do you go into the battlefield, right? Into the thick of a battlefield with, something like a weapon that can break in any minute? No, you probably don't. You want to have a good armor because it's work. Like, literally, you go there and do the work. And that's, you feel like a little wizard or soldier when you go into the field. And usually I would say you don't just clear the field for yourself, but also obviously for the collective, the environment around you, because as you said, we have that electric field everywhere. So we also are working with the field around us and helping obviously the field around us too. So I think it's, it's not an investment people should not take, because
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Yeah, I think that somebody said something really interesting to me the other day, and they said that humans don't take up space, humans create space. And I thought that was it really got me to reflect. I like it when I hear things that I have to chew on for a while. But truly, as humans, we exist in the space between each other. And I think that becomes evident when you know that different people bring out different qualities of you, right? And why is that happening? That's happening in our shared space. And so when you make your own coherence your biggest priority, then you generate coherent space. And you bring that around with you. You bring it around with you when you're driving, when you're interacting with anybody, and it rubs off, right? A strong, coherent signal overtakes and entrains a weak, incoherent signal. And so that's the way that we improve the world, is by improving ourselves. I saw a lot of people having their emotional chains yanked during the election. And these people were pouring out huge amounts of incoherent energy into the collective. That's not helping their health. That's not helping anyone. That's not making the world a better place. Like, it is absolutely the wrong thing to do, to allow your emotional chain to be hooked to things that you don't have power over. And I think people are starting to wake up to this concept of sovereignty. Like, all you can change is yourself. And that is how it's by integrating the shadow side. It's by healing the traumas. It's by the ancestral miasms and cultural lies. Like, all of these things have to be digested within us, alchemized within us. And then we generate that experience strongly wherever we go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I said it on my podcast a few times before. It's, when you step out of the house in the morning, you have to ask yourself, have you done your energetic hygiene as well, or are you going out and pollute the air?
Yeah,
And
or be
most
a
people,
victim, right? Then
yeah,
you're
be a
like gonna go
victim, be
be a
stressed,
reactive victim. Yeah,
exactly. People are not conscious of their energy fields and think, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is the lipstick and the dress and whatever and how I look, but it's more how you vibrate. Like,
yeah,
what are you emitting to the outside world and to your environment? Because again, are you polluting the air or not? Because we have enough pollution already. And I
yeah,
think
absolutely.
we have
Yeah,
enough tools to help our energy field, even with like tiny things, like, yeah, listening to sound baths, or really doing an energy bath. I want to say every single day. Like, I use sound all day long, and I would actually explain how it's different to like listen to a sound bath, for example, and working with the with the forks and like doing an attunement, for example, and distance attunements that you do as
Yeah.
well?
Well, a sound bath is more like what we call sound healing. It's going, lying down, relaxing, letting these waves kind of wash over and wash through. You're mostly water. And so these sound waves, as they're traveling through your body, are interrupting your patterns of tension, how you hold your mind, how you hold your emotions, can really just bring people into a relaxed state, right? Biofield tuning is sound therapy. We work with a map, we work with very specific system, we have a very specific protocol that people follow. It's more precise, it's more surgical. For example, I worked with somebody recently who had a whole lot of trauma under the age of 3 around shame. And it was all precognitive, and it was coming up in his relationship with his partner that he would get triggered, he'd go into this defensive hunker, there were no words for it, he was ashamed of his behavior, and then he'd come out of it, and then they would never talk about it, but he didn't have any words for what was happening because that impression in his field and his signal was under the age of 3. There were no words for it. So with working with the biofield anatomy map, which basically your biofield, your magnetic field, is in this model based on my observation where your memories are held. That they're not just in the brain, that they're stored in standing waves in your field in this very specific format. There's a very specific anatomy and physiology to the biofield that I mapped between the years of 2006 and 2010 when I started exploring the atmosphere around the body. And I was like, whoa, there's all kinds of stuff going on around here. And through pattern recognition and repetition, this anatomy was revealed to me. So the field is timelined. As we generate experiences, right? You think about everything that we see, smell, touch, taste, feel, respond to, hear, it's all electrical signals in the body. Therefore, it makes sense that our memories are stored in our electrical system. And we know that standing waves can hold huge amounts of information. So in these standing waves in our field, it's like our body is generating our experience, and then it just kind of radiates out and is stored in the field. So information I find close to your body is current or recent, and information I find at the very edge of your field, the boundary layer of your field, because it's a bubble. So within that boundary layer is information of gestation. Just inside that is birth. And then it's like dropping a needle on an album and reading the vibrational record of someone's life. There's this whole language of vibration that I've learned over the years. So like that sound is a breakup, that sound is a car accident, that sound is arthritis. There's different, every emotion has a specific frequency signature and sort of a zone within the field where these things get stored. And so our trauma that is precognitive, like the memory bank, can be accessed through the field. So I can put a fork in that 2-year-old, in that memory of that 2-year-old, and hear and feel what was going on in the system. And then it acts like a mirror. It reflects it back to the body. It's like you and I don't know that our hair is a mess, we have a poppy seed in our teeth, that our collar isn't straight, unless we look in a mirror. Right? And then we all do the same thing. When we're out of order, we look in a mirror. Every single one of us will put ourselves in order, right? Yeah. And that is what the tuning forks do. They reflect to the body, hey, you're out of order over here. And the body goes, whoa, I really am out of order over there. And it will use that reflection and that steady, coherent input to put itself in order. And it will resolve the tension. It will resolve the pattern. It'll just let it go, because we're designed to be in harmony. That is our fundamental blueprint, is harmony and order in our own being and in relationship to the cosmos and to life. That's how we're designed. And anything that is not order and coherence is noise in the signal. And the noise in the signal, your body's designed to resolve it, but it needs the reflection and the support in order to do that, right? So I was able to just hang out there, and I had to spend 20 minutes in that one spot, 5.5 feet away from his body, right? And until his body finally got enough information and enough reflection to resolve that distortion. And then afterwards, he had this incredible experience of like heart opening and, that the noise just like not being there anymore, the reaction, the whole thing, right? So that's the difference between a sound bath where you're just getting general waves put through you and something that's more like sonic surgery that is very specific and might have spots, especially under the age of 3. Like I spent 50 minutes in an 80-year-old man's gestational zone, 50 minutes, like before it finally resolved, that his mom was kind of crazy and that there were numerous times in the pregnancy where she stopped eating and he almost starved to death multiple times. So he could get to the place where he'd almost die and then be resurrected and almost die and be resurrected. And his whole life had been built on that. The guy had started 2 acupuncture schools. He'd spent his whole life trying to resolve the chaos in his system from almost dying multiple times in utero. And so with this approach and this ability to literally go into that very specific memory, and because he was so old, right, it took such a long time. I'm like hanging the fork, like chatting about the weather, chatting about sports. I'm like, is this thing ever gonna let go? And then it finally did. It finally let go and resolved. And he had just this massive systemic shift as a consequence of it. Acupuncture isn't gonna get into that kind of thing. Yeah.
That's why, I mean, first of all, he wasn't probably even aware of that this was the issue. And so
I think he had a sense that it went all the way back there, but he had no idea how to access it, how to like get right into that specific spot and memory. And it took a lot of work, for the body to like, oh, okay, I'm working on resolving this. And it took a long time. So you're not going to get that kind of effect at all from a sound bath.
yeah, for sure. One thing that you talked about before that I found really, really interesting, because I work with astrology, obviously, and always say, it's for us to express the highest expression of that vibration, or like I see the chart as an energetic vibration or potential that we have, and we can express the lower end of the energy or the higher end of the energy, so to speak. And you were sharing about your experience of tuning your astrology chart and how that impacted your life. So I would love for you to dive into that, because I mean, that's like next level to me.
Yeah, it is next level. Let me grab a little prop. Okay, so this is a torus. So this is the shape of the biofield, right? So this is what we call the central channel. The body is here, and then this is the field. So in this model, the body is inside the mind. The biofield, the electrical system, is your conscious mind, your subconscious mind. It's where all your memories are stored, right? And so we're in the upside down backwards world. We're like told that our mind is inside our head, inside our body, but it's actually the other way around. So if you look at it from this angle, what it looks like is an astrological chart, right? Where it divides it, that has 12 bands, and it divides it into 12 houses. And so I became very intrigued. So it came to me one day, I got the insight that the biofield, because you might think of it, oh, it's like a torus or it's a bubble. You might think that it's smooth, but I realized that it was banded and that it had 12 bands like pumpkin. And that each of those 12 bands was comprised of 12 strands, kind of like fiber optic light cables. Remember those fiber optic lamps from the 70s and 80s? So that what that leads to is actually 144 illuminated strands of light that are circulating through our field. We talk about the number 144 of 144,000, 144 strand DNA. Like, where does that come from, right? It comes from this, the electrical model. So I became very intrigued by the bands. I was like, well, what's going on in these bands? And then the fact that it divides into 12 houses. So you get this model of 12 around one, like Christ and the 12 disciples, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, the 12 houses of the zodiac, and the 13th hidden one, Ophiuchus, right? So this model of 12 around one, we see in a lot of places. Man is the measure of all things. And so it's fractal, right? So I did one exploration with a friend of mine, just kind of into the bands and a little bit into the spaces in between, because I was like, can we make these into the astrological houses or the 12 gods of the Roman pantheon, or, is there some kind of symbolism to be found here? And then I started working with an apprentice who was an astrologer. And I came up with the idea to have him, he's a good astrologer, he's been studying astrology for a long time. I was like, let's do an experiment. So we were working remotely. He was in the Netherlands, and he created a 12-foot wide circle in his living room that he divided into 12 segments. And then he put up my chart so that he could see it. And he used the tuning fork and he started combing through from my first house, like through the houses. And every place in my chart where there was a luminary, he could hear and feel it. Could hear and
Wow.
feel it. And I could hear and feel it. And I could feel the qualities of each house that we were in. I was like, at one point I was like, I feel like I have haunches. And he said, well, we're in Sagittarius right now, right? The centaur archer. It was, so each house had a very different feel to it. And each set of luminaries had its own dynamic and its own, like places where there was tension. It's so interesting. And so when he came all the way around through and through the 12th house and back into the first house, I had this momentary feeling where I felt almost like a walk in. I felt like something just landed in my body that wasn't there before. And over the next few days, I felt like a Jedi on a battlefield. I was just freaking slaying every task like effortlessly. It like brought out this whole warrior archetype in me that I already know that I have, we all have different archetype compositions, right? I know that warrior is a big one of mine, but I was like full on in it, in full on slay mode. I was just like, whoa, my God, this is freaking amazing. So we came up with some different approaches for it. We got to do it in person last February with a mutual friend, where we tuned her, and this woman already had very much queen energy, royalty energy. But when we finished, she was just like full on African royalty queen energy, just full in that archetype, like so powerful. It's just amazing. It's truly amazing. And like certain areas, like the South Node, can get so gnarly and heavy, but it creates like this lightness. And then we actually tuned the chart of the United States together at
My
an event called Confluence on the April 8th eclipse. We were in a place where the eclipse was happening in Texas. And I did it in a yurt with maybe 40 people, and it was massively emotionally moving, especially for the guys. Like a whole bunch of the guys started crying. One guy went into the house next door and like bawled his eyes out for like half an hour, after we did that chart tuning for, for whatever reason. I don't know what it did in the grand scheme of things, but for the people who witnessed it, it was incredibly powerful. We've tuned our combined charts, like so we've started to delve into what is possible in this, and I definitely think it's one of the more powerful approaches to tuning that I've come up with. I've come up with many different approaches, dozens, but that one is like there's and people who are astrologers are very attracted to it. They're like, I want to do this. Well, you
I
have to
mean,
be a tuner and an astrologer.
I want definitely. I was going to ask. You have to connect me with a practitioner who does that. I want to experience that, and then report back. How I feel. It would be
Well,
awesome.
unfortunately, he's an actor, and he he's in a big movie is coming out in February, and he's in another movie. So he kind of his other career has kind of taken off, and so as it is now, he's not available. But we want to be able to create a an educational program about it, because I think that it's a way of getting in and resolving things that might have seemed unresolvable.
Yeah, because a lot of people, even when they work with me, I mean, I always say, it's your choice, and with awareness, then you can be the pattern interrupt, and you don't have to continue the pattern in your chart. It's not like your destiny is doomed to be this way. It's about shining a light on it. I work with the gene keys as well. In the shadow aspect of your gene keys, you can move into the gift or into the highest expression, but we need the awareness of it first. We need to understand what patterns are there, and with astrology, it's imprinted in your DNA. It's or like in your biofield as
I
well.
mean,
You have
it's in your field. Like the luminaries are around you, informing you. It's not just out there. Like that is all electromagnetic. You are electromagnetic. We are so much more informed by our electromagnetic environment and the points of radiance that exist in it than we realize. Yeah.
Yeah, I always explain that too, why certain transits affect you more or not. It's also based on your chart, and maybe you can then tune that specific planet that is hit by a specific transit right now, and you go through your Saturn return, so it's not as
Yeah,
crazy.
frictiony. It's friction is really what we encountered in there. Places where there's friction, and that friction can be released. Yeah, and resolved. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely come up with a program, please. I'm going to sign up straight after Sing the Body Electric, which I also want to touch on briefly too, because it's been so profound to work with Sing the Body Electric. Very liberating, very grounding, very bringing me into my body again. And I didn't expect it. I mean, I've used my voice, and I've always been like very expressive with having a podcast and all of that, but it's like working with my voice on an entirely new level, and it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Sing the Body Electric work is primarily what we work with is something called the sonic anatomy. And the sonic anatomy is a collection of 42 tones, sounds that are very much like baby sounds. There's sounds like goo and gee and da and ma and pa, wah, all sounds that babies make very naturally when they're exploring their resonant cavity, when they're exploring what it means to have a voice. They make these sounds. And when we were babies making these sounds, we were undivided. There was no self against self. There was no self outside self judging self about the sounds, the quality of the sound we were making. So it brings us back to this infant state where we sound just for the sake of sounding. And it's not about sounding good or looking good or performing. And it's a process of each tone resonates in a specific area of the body. For example, pa resonates in the liver. Ma resonates in the spleen. Mi resonates in the belly. Dao, re, ru are the three sounds of the feet, the heel, the arch, and the front of the foot. And so we lead people through an experience of going into these areas and sounding from them. Lungs, da. And we just get people to go there and make that sound. Now, if you had a difficult relationship with your father and he was angry and abusive, you have energy in your field around contraction around your father, and that's going to inform your liver. So when you go to make the sound pa, it's going to reflect that contraction. It's going to come out sounding like pa.
And your voice cracks. It's not clear. That's where you can detect the signal, right?
Yeah, you can absolutely tell. But what's cool is all you have to do is keep adding air and sound. And then you move through from pa to pa, 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 pa. And it's like a cleaning of pipes. It's like we're like pipe organs that through all these experiences of contraction, of shutting down, of being told to do too much or this or that, and then we go and make sound and our voice comes out sounding like this. And we're like, I can't sing. Well, yeah, that's because your pipes are all clogged and shut down. And so it's a way to just go in and make simple sounds that just get everything open and flowing. And it's like this wonderful back door into a more soulful voice that's coming from embodied expression and the enjoyment of playing with your instrument instead of this inwardly divided, critical, trying to sing from here thing that so many people get stuck in. And we just led a 3-day retreat at Esalen in California. And so wonderful to watch people through this process suddenly find themselves singing openly and joyfully in like 8 hours of practice. All of a sudden you're like, wow, I can sing. Because we got into what was really going on was that your pipes were clogged. And we went in there and cleaned them out. And I'm sure you've noticed this, Kathy, is that as your voice becomes more free and liberated, you advocate for yourself more readily, you speak up your boundaries, you say things that previously you wouldn't have said, you feel just happier in your body, right? It ripples out into your whole life. And the freedom that you experience in your voice becomes the freedom that you experience in your life.
Yeah, it's very much to me the connection between sacral and throat as well, even in the anatomy. It's you get that fire back, you get your power back, you get your creativity, your self-expression, all of that back. And I think that's what we need the most on the planet in general, where most people don't express their creative gifts. And that's the issue, and it ripples into, having the thyroid issues, the Hashimoto. The amount of people that came to me since I've been doing Sing the Body Electric with Hashimoto, I'm like, is this like, am I attracting them like a flea now? And to everyone, I'm like, okay, I think we have to sing together or do something. Like, you need to express yourself and what is going on in your creative life. And everyone was dead, literally.
Dead,
Like, no creative
dead.
thing, no fire, no joy, no nothing.
Yep, I saw that. That it was an interesting thing to witness as an instructor in this class. We had like 60 people in the class. And in the beginning, they were all like fireplaces with no fire in the hearth. And at the end, they were all like, they had just nice, warm, rippling, they came alive, right? And they got warmer, they got more creative, more radiant, more playful, more fun, right? And it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be this long, hard slog to get there, right? This because I owned a busy restaurant for 13 years, and I was a waitress for years before that. And so I'm super efficiency oriented. I'm like, what's the fastest way from here to there? And this program, it's amazing to me actually how quickly we can bring people into that freedom, alive, creative, like raw kind of place. Yeah, I'm so glad you did it.
Yeah, and that's why I want to scream it from the rooftops, because it's been just so fun. I've been guinea pigging with a few of my friends, singing some Wami Booyahs to release their fear. And they were just like, after one jingle together, gosh, I feel like a new person. I'm like, this was only one thing. It was a small thing. And I was just like trying things out with people, you know, and it's just such a profound impact. I did actually all the tonics on the day of the full moon in Taurus. That was so, like electrifying with Uranus, and I just felt high and like on steroid afterwards, because
Yeah.
I did nervous system, the fear, like the really, I mean, everything. I was like, okay, my cells are definitely having a party now.
Yeah, there's a vitality, right? That is it. That's what I love about it is how alive I feel. I actually got a case of food poisoning on my trip to California. I got a bad cappuccino and ended up spending hours losing it at both ends. And my inner needle, my energy level didn't even budge. Like I woke up the next morning and I was great. I was, like even though I'm like retching and really, really sick from a bad case of food poisoning, because my system is so resilient and so vital and so full of sound and energy, I was like a weeble wobble that barely wobbled at all from that kind of hit. So the more that you build your vitality, the more squishy and bouncy and resilient your energy bubble becomes, the more that you can take stress, you can take hits and not have them take you down. And given that the world is becoming more and more stressful and chaotic, that's what we need to do is to build this resilience, and the best way is with sound. I would say the very best way is with your voice, and the next best way is with tuning forks.
Yeah, again, the voice is it's a free tool. You take it with you everywhere. And so it's just about learning how to use it. And actually, I think it's a free transmission that you have about resilience, like a test on your website. So I will link that, because it's a good one to do. Just like every so often whenever we feel like it, it's like part of your hygiene, just to build that and boost that resilience, and to give a, sound healing or like working with tuning forks a little test. Because you have a couple of sessions for free for people to try, which I love. And also I think strands of DNA one is a free one on, yeah. So
Yeah,
a lot,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, God always asks me to give away the most important ones. He's like, people need these, so make them free. There's a whole bunch. There's my Sonic Sunday series on YouTube. There's 23 free tunings on YouTube, and they're all conversations about tricky subjects. So they're sort of philosophical discussions and tunings. Um, there's a one with a 222, a meditation with a 222 on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, I'm here to help. That is, I was a mess, and very much a mess, and it took me a long time to straighten myself out. I've had thousands of tune-ups, and done so much work with Sing the Body Electric, and I don't want anyone to work as hard as I have. I feel like I'm working really hard to trample down the path to make it easier for others to make use of these resources so that you can get to your potential, right? So, you said something earlier about highest potential and low potential, and I avoid those phrases. And I'll tell you why. Because when we heal, we don't go up. We go out in every direction. We expand in every direction. Our consciousness expands. We're not looking for our highest potential. We're looking for our most expanded potential, as opposed to our when we get into contraction. We're not looking for high vibes. We're looking for clear vibes and a strong signal, right? I want to be clear and strong.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's about brightness, it's about how can you shine brighter if you think of
right.
yourself as a flame, right? How can the flame become brighter and brighter and brighter so it warms the field?
That's right.
Yeah.
Radiant. And radiance is a hard place for people to get to. Well, I'm working on a book right now. My third book is called Stabilizing Statements. And it's a collection of 27 different statements that each go with a different part of the body. And the solar plexus statement is, I am radiant. And when I work with people in groups, that is the hardest one for people to say and to feel and to own, because our brightness,
And
our
most
light,
people, you know,
yeah, we've
yeah,
been shut
most people
down.
know they are not in their radiance. And then how can I say I'm in my radiance when you deep down inside know I'm not, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So to your point, we want to get brighter. We want to experience our electric body, the light that we are, that is the same light as the sun and stars, all the light you can and cannot see from the source of all light is in us, right? The ocean in a drop right here. And that the nature of that is that it can't be created or destroyed. It is beyond death. I would say that our biofield, that our electrical system is the same thing as our soul, because when you're alive, your light is on, and when you die, your light goes out. And it goes out with all the memories that you are holding in that light body, in that magnetic field, right? So there is no death, really. It's like the avatar may expire, but the essence of self, the biofield, the light bubble that you are, uh, carries on, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm not entirely convinced of reincarnation, but it would make a lot of sense when you see these kids that are prodigies that start playing an instrument like mad, in a way you're like, how is that even possible if they didn't already have the memory of it in their soul?
Yeah,
So
that's, I mean, yeah, it's when you sleep, you also radiate some energy out there, and
yeah,
you're just not and you're just not focused or conscious on it. It's just like a shift in perception, or however you want to say. So yeah, I agree with you. There is no death, or like
yeah.
every day it's death, every single moment. So Eileen, thank you. That was amazing. I would love for you to let us know what we can get excited about, what's coming in 2025 from you, and yeah, where we can find you. I obviously will link everything down below as well, but maybe give us a little, teaser for what's next in
Hmm.
Eileen.
Well, let's see. There's an event called Confluence in Bandera, Texas at Sovereignty Ranch. That's May 7th through 12th. That is an incredibly fun event that I will be at. the Brothers Korn and I are planning on doing a Sing the Body Electric event in Sedona. We don't have dates for it yet, but you can stay tuned for that. And we're doing a Biofield Tuning Sing the Body Electric community retreat for anybody, whether you're a tuner or a toner or just curious about that, at that same ranch in Texas, October 9th through 12th, 2025. So if anybody wants to come to that, put on your calendar. We don't have links for any of these things yet. And my book, Stabilizing Statements, will be out in February. Yeah, that's it for right now. Certainly, you can go to biofieldtuning.com, biofieldtuningstore.com. Like Kathy said, there are many free sessions there, and then there's all kinds of recordings. And to ask how a recording of tuning forks might help you, have you ever listened to a song that might have been recorded 20 years ago and it made you cry? Did you have to be there when it was
All the
recorded?
time. Yeah.
No, right? So can recorded
And
sound?
I have to say, one of my friends and I, we constantly exchange when we did a tune-up with you. And she always sends me a voice message after. She's like, this Eileen person is like, there's something weird. Every time I do a tuning fork or attunement with her, I feel the call for an attunement. It's like she only does it for me. Like she speaks about, for example, it's an attunement for whatever, the liver, but then she talks about vertigo, which I've experienced for the last 2 days, and I didn't even think that would come up in that attunement. So it's kind of interesting how it always fits perfectly, and you
Yeah.
think that cannot possible because it's a group attunement. Like, how can it be so specific? But it's you're becoming an energetic match to the recording as well because of your energetic frequency. That's how I always explain it. So it's like, yeah, it's crazy and it's wild, and you think reality is definitely a weird show, but yeah, every single moment, every single time, with every single attunement I've done, the wildest synchronicities come up. It's
Yeah.
so interesting.
I know you're making me think of a friend who was listening on a plane, and they were coming down, and just as her ears were popping, I was like, "What pressure change? My ears just popped." And she was like, "How is that even possible that my ears popped and her ears popped at the same time?" And she recorded this 4 years ago. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah,
So
or
yeah,
even though some of the moments in some of the attunements where my mind was really like, oh no, I should rather go grab something to drink, or I could, I was really not like be able to focus. And then you were like saying something around, there's definitely some noise in the signal around not being able to focus and wanting to run away and wanting to go to something else. I'm like, I feel it, I feel called out.
you weren't the only one. I had a bunch of people tell me that around that one. They were like, I was just getting ready to shut it off, and you were like, don't go.
Don't you dare grab something now.
That's funny.
Oh, that's proof that it definitely is working, and yeah, it's working magic. So thank you for all the work that you do, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people will stalk you now. Maybe get some peacemakers for yourself. I definitely will get them very soon. Hopefully, they will arrive quickly. And yeah, definitely excited for Sing the Body Electric as well. And yeah, again, connecting and yeah, for your book and for everything that you're going to do in 2025. So thank you so much for your work, and yeah, let's stay in touch.
Sounds good, Kathy. Thank you.